With the rear of our Truggy pretty much complete, we'll carry on with the front end, and although we've installed our suspension arms and sway bar, it's time for the front CVAs and hub carriers with the ET48 2.0 Bag H. This bag will be similar to Bag F, which included the rear hubs and links, although with a couple of slight differences due to the steering on the front end. But after this bag, we'll almost finish off the front end of the Truggy. So in this bag we have some really nice parts. As with the rear, we have these perfectly designed CVA kits, the spindles look pretty solid too, and we have the turnbuckles and all the other small hardware pieces to put together. We have our aluminum caster blocks in this bag too, again finished with precision and oozing high quality. Each is labelled according to whether it fits on the left or right side. Bearing in mind when looking at left and right, have the vehicle facing forward or away from you, not towards you. Finally, with your grease and thread lock close by, we're ready to get started. Okay, we'll begin with our spindles by inserting a 6mm button head screw. This steering stop screw creates a mechanical stop to limit the steering throw, making the car easier to drive by improving the consistency of the steering. With both sides complete, we can insert a flanged bearing to the front, a spacer in the middle, and a larger bearing into the rear. Repeat on the opposite side. Next we'll get our CVAs built, just like we did for the rear, nothing new here. Again, I like to use a dab of grease, not too much to attract dirt, but just a tad to help keep things free and increase the longevity of the parts. Again, repeat the process for both sides, and then go ahead and insert both into the spindles we've already prepared. I like to give both a good turn at this point, making sure they are completely free. Next we need to drop on one of the two 17mm wheel hexes onto the axle, making sure to align the holes, and insert a retaining pin. Again, notice the pin has a flat edge in the middle. This needs to be facing outwards so that we can insert a set screw to lock it into place. Remember to apply some thread lock to that set screw and tighten down. Again, we repeat the same steps for the opposite side. And with that said, our front CVAs and spindles are complete. Both should turn completely freely with no binding whatsoever. We now need to attach our caster blocks before we install onto the front end assembly. Before doing that, insert two set screws loosely into the side of the spindle, top and bottom. We'll tighten these down shortly. Repeat on both sides. Now with the caster block in hand, we're starting with the right side here. Insert a small bearing into the top and bottom, then position the first spindle in between the caster block, and secure with a kingpin shoulder screw from the top, and the same on the bottom, taking care not to over tighten. We really don't want any binding here, everything should remain completely free moving. We can then tighten the set screws, taking care not to over tighten though, just snug but not over tight. We're now ready to get this side onto the front assembly. With a block in place on the suspension arm, insert a spindle carrier hinge pin into either side of the arm and into the caster block. Note that each hinge pin has a flat section at the end. Ensure this is facing outwards while inserting into position. Since we now need to secure these in place using a pair of set screws going into the side of the caster block and locking the hinge pins into place. A little thread lock on each set screw as well, of course. It's the same on the opposite side. Prepare the caster block with bearings, position the spindle, insert the kingpin shoulder screws, along with the set screws, and place into position on the opposite arm, before inserting a spindle carrier hinge pin on either side, and securing in place with the final set of set screws, complete with thread lock. The front end is really starting to take shape now. All that's left is to get these front camber links into position, although we need to build them first, so with a little grease on the threads, proceed to screw each turnbuckle into the rod end. Again, taking care not to go too far and create a dimple at the ball end. Just like the rear, these need to have a 69.5mm gap, so try to be as precise as possible here. With both links created, insert a pivot ball into each rod end, very easy with the Tekno shock tool. I also tend to move the ball around once inserted just to make sure it's completely free. If it's not, you could have screwed the turnbuckle in too far and created a small dimple in the plastic on the inside of the ball end, which you'll need to Dremel down. Remembering that the notch always goes to the left side of the vehicle, line up the camber link on the inner side of the buggy, inserting a 22mm caphead screw from front to back at either end. Stock position is outer lower hole on the caster block, and inner second down hole on the shock tower. Remembering to make sure the dog bone end of the drive shaft is seated within its cup. We can then tighten both screws into flanged lock nuts just so that they're snug. Repeat on the opposite side with the final camber link, again remembering notch goes to the left. And with that said, we're done with this kit bag. A quick final check to ensure everything is nice and free, which it is. No reaming or anything else necessary. You're seeing everything I'm doing throughout this build firsthand. Nothing has been prepared off camera here, so as you can see, everything is coming along super nicely. Both rear and front ends are at the same stage now. Arms attached, hubs and drive shafts in place, camber links in place, and all nice and smooth. Although we need to carry on with a few extra parts to the front assembly with our next kit bag, in particular the steering assembly.